when you're preparing for a massive mountain descent, there's this intense obsession with the weight of your backpack. You weigh every single carabiner and every ration. You adjust the straps, you hit your exact target weight, and you just feel entirely ready for the expedition.
Yeah, well, you feel ready until something goes wrong, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because knowing the precise weight of your pack, it tells you absolutely nothing about whether you have a secured permanent base camp waiting for you below, if a freak blizzard rolls in.
Exactly. And that tension between carrying a lot of supplies versus actually having an unshakable safety net beneath you, that is exactly why the financial industry's favorite marketing gimmick, the retirement number, is actually a dangerous illusion.
Which is the perfect jumping off point. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are continuing our companion descent into the ideas from Tod Long's flagship platform, the Income Standard.
Yeah, specifically, we're unpacking the frameworks laid out in Season 1, Episode 2 of his show.
Right. We are looking at why that big green circle filling up on your 401k dashboard is giving you this false sense of security. You hit the number, you cross the finish line, and you just assume the journey is over. Which
completely ignores the reality of what retirement actually is. I mean, a number is just a static snapshot on a random Tuesday.
Right, it's not a complete picture.
No, a modern retirement is incredibly dynamic. It is roughly 30 years of continuous, inescapable spending.
Not to mention unpredictable healthcare shocks and tax code changes and all of that.
Exactly. So a single figure at the starting line gives you a measurement of what you are carrying, but it tells you almost nothing about whether you will actually survive a highly volatile journey.
So let's ground this in the concrete example from Tod Long's material, because the contrast here is staggering. We have two people, person A and person B.
Right. And they both retire in the exact same week.
Yeah, they both step up to the starting line with exactly $1.2 million in their portfolios.
And by every conventional advisory standard, those two people have achieved the exact same level of success. I mean, a traditional dashboard shows them tied for first place.
But practically speaking, person A is walking a tightrope without a net. They have zero guaranteed income beyond basic Social Security.
Yeah. Every single dollar they need to live on has to be extracted from that $1.2 million portfolio. They're entirely dependent on withdrawing money from assets that fluctuate in value every second of the day.
To pay the mortgage and buy groceries and, just keep the lights on.
Exactly, all of it.
But then you compare that to person B's structural setup. Person B optimized their Social Security claiming strategy.
Yeah, and they hold an $18,000 a year pension from a previous employer. Plus, they took a portion of their assets and secured an annuity that generates another $22,000 a year.
Meaning every single one of person B's non-negotiable living expenses is entirely covered by a guaranteed income stream.
Right, so they both have that same $1.2 million number. Yet person B is completely insulated from market shocks affecting their daily survival.
Okay, let's unpack this, though, because I think a lot of people would say, wait, if I have a massive pile of index funds, isn't that mathematically safe just by its sheer size?
That is the assumption, yeah.
Like if person A has over $1 million, why does the underlying structure of their income even matter? They have a mountain of cash. They should be fine regardless of whether it's structured as a guaranteed pension or just sitting in a brokerage account, right?
Well, that assumption is the exact trap traditional financial planning falls into. It ignores a very destructive mathematical reality called sequence of returns risk.
Which is terrifying when you actually look at the math.
It really is. So let's walk through the exact scenario outlined in the source material. Imagine a severe market correction hits, and the market drops 34% in year 2 of their retirement.
Getting hit that early in the journey is just brutal.
It is the ultimate stress test. Look at person B, who has all their essential expenses covered by guaranteed income. They do absolutely nothing.
Because their bills are paid.
Exactly. Their portfolio value certainly drops on paper, but they don't have to sell a single share of stock to buy groceries or pay their property taxes. They simply leave the portfolio alone and wait for the market to eventually recover.
But person A, however, has no floor beneath them. They still need $54,000 a year to live, regardless of what the S&P 500 is doing.
Right, so they have to log into their account and sell off their assets at the absolute bottom of the market just to buy food.
Wow.
And here's how the math of that actually works. If the market drops by 1/3 and you still need to pull out $54,000 in cash, you have to sell significantly more shares to generate that exact same amount of money.
So you are liquidating your assets at bargain basement prices.
Exactly. And when the market finally turns around 2 or 3 years later, Those specific shares you sold are gone forever?
They aren't there to ride the elevator back up. You've effectively amputated a piece of your portfolio's earning power.
And the compounding effect of that early amputation is devastating. The material points out that even if the market completely recovers and goes on a historic bull run, those early forced withdrawals permanently impair Person A's portfolio.
Wow, so they never catch up.
No, by age 85, Person A ends up $340,000 poorer than Person B purely because they were forced to sell during a temporary downturn. Having a big number does not protect you against bad timing.
But structural architecture does.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the listener? It feels like the difference between relying on a giant reservoir of water that might evaporate during a 10-year drought versus tapping into a small permanent spring that simply never stops flowing.
Oh, that analogy hits the nail on the head. A reservoir is a balance sheet. You measure it by asking, do I have enough volume?
Right. And you just hold your breath hoping it doesn't run dry.
Exactly. But a spring is cash flow. You measure it by asking, is this stream constant regardless of the weather?
And shifting a listener from balance sheet thinking to cash flow, thinking that requires a massive psychological rewrite for most retirees.
It really does. Which brings us to the central engineering concept of Tod Long's framework, income flooring.
Which sounds like something a general contractor would talk about, but it's actually a totally different way to construct a retirement plan.
Right, so income flooring requires you to sit down and ruthlessly identify your strictly non-negotiable monthly expenses. We are stripping away the country club dues and the European river cruises.
No spoiling the grandkids in this calculation.
No, we are isolating the mortgage or rent, the utility bills, healthcare premiums, basic groceries, and essential transportation. The baseline costs that keep you alive and healthy and sheltered.
The bills that show up in the mail, even if the stock market is down 30% and the economy is in a recession.
Exactly. Once you isolate that exact baseline number, you build a layer of guaranteed income to match it.
Using things like Social Security pensions, fixed annuities, whatever contractually guaranteed tools fit your specific situation.
Right. The goal is to cover those specific expenses completely and permanently.
And the part of the source material that really struck me was how establishing this floor completely transforms the job description of your investment portfolio.
How so?
Well, it's no longer functioning as your life support system.
Exactly. If your basic survival is guaranteed by a binding contract, your $1.2 million portfolio is instantly liberated. It transitions from being a high-stress life support account to being pure discretionary wealth.
So it's there for the fun stuff, like the travel, the flexibility, legacy planning.
Yeah, if the market crashes, you might decide to skip a vacation to Italy that year, but you are never forced to sell off assets to pay the electric bill.
Okay, understanding the concept of a floor is one thing, but actually engineering it seems incredibly complex.
It can seem that way, yeah.
Yeah, but the material lays out a very specific three-question architecture framework. And Tod Long emphasizes over and over that architecture must always precede allocation.
That philosophy directly challenges how the industry usually operates. Most traditional advisors want to jump straight into portfolio construction and stock picking.
Or tax sequencing and managing RMD exposure at age 73.
Right.
Let's pause on that jargon for a second. RMD exposure at age 73 is required minimum distributions. It's the IRS stepping in and saying, okay, you've kept this retirement money tax deferred long enough.
Yeah, now we are forcing you to pull a specific percentage out every year and pay taxes on it whether you need the cash or not.
Which is a massive tax planning headache.
It is a massive issue, but Todd's framework argues that worrying about RMDs or tax sequencing is entirely downstream. You cannot logically allocate assets or plan for taxes until you have fundamentally architected the income.
So let's walk through the architecture. Question number one, what are the actual non-negotiable monthly expenses? Needs, not wants.
Right. And then question number two, what guaranteed income sources currently exist in your life or can be built?
And question number three, what is the exact mathematical gap between those expenses and that income, and how do we efficiently close it?
It is a sequential, highly logical diagnostic tool.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because step one feels almost too simple. Figuring out your expenses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do most people actually know their true non-negotiable floor, or do they just sit at the kitchen table and guess?
Oh, guessing is the silent killer of most retirement plans.
Huh.
A couple will sit down and say, oh, we've probably spent about $5,000 a month.
But human nature causes us to forget the lumpy expenses right.
Absolutely. We forget about the property taxes that only hit twice a year. We forget that Medicare Part B premiums often increase.
Or the massive car insurance bill that hits every 6 months.
Right.
Or the reality that a roof eventually needs replacing.
Yeah, so if you build a structural floor based on a guess and you underestimate your baseline by even $500 a month, you have essentially built a permanent floor with a trap door in it.
Which is why engineering precise concrete figures is mandatory. You cannot build a durable structure on an estimation.
Never.
Right. So the math makes sense in a vacuum, but let's see how this actually plays out for a real couple. The material provides a case study that proves how even a seemingly perfect traditional retirement plan can hide a dangerous structural gap.
Yeah, let's look at David and Carol. They represent the ideal traditional scenario. David is 64 and Carol is 62.
And they're planning for David to retire at 66. They've diligently saved a combined portfolio of $1.4 million.
Their home is entirely paid off and they have absolutely zero debt.
They are the absolute poster children for hitting the mythical retirement number.
Right, and when they take this financial snapshot to a traditional advisor, the advisor runs a Monte Carlo simulation.
Which is a computer model that takes their portfolio and fires thousands of different randomized market histories at it right.
Yeah, blizzards and bull markets, crashes, stagflation, just to see if the money survives.
And the simulation spits out a number and tells David and Carol they have a 93% probability of success.
Right, and if a surgeon tells you a complex operation has a 93% success rate, you feel incredibly relieved. You assume you are safe.
But let's look at their actual architecture, using Tod Long's 3 questions instead of a random probability model.
Okay, so step 1, they're concrete, non-negotiable expenses. When you factor in healthcare utilities, food property taxes, and insurance, their baseline is $50,400 a year.
And step 2, their guaranteed income. After optimizing their strategy, let's say their combined Social Security payout is an even $50,000 a year.
Which brings us to step 3, calculating the gap. Their expenses are $50,400. Their guaranteed income is $50,000. They have a structural gap of $400 a month.
Honestly, isn't the traditional advisor right, though? I mean, pulling $400 a month from $1.4 million is noise. Why be so dogmatic about closing such a tiny gap?
Well, because fine is a probability. We want a guarantee. Mathematically speaking, you are right. $400 is a microscopic percentage of $1.4 million.
A portfolio that size generates that much in basic stock dividends before I even pour my morning coffee.
Sure, but structurally speaking, a floor with a $400 hole is not a floor.
It's a leaky boat.
Exactly. Because what happens when the 2008 financial crisis repeats itself? What happens when that $1.4 million drops 30% in a matter of months?
The dividends dry up.
Right. And because that $400 gap still exists, David and Carol are still forced to log into their account and sell off depressed assets at a massive loss just to cover their baseline survival.
So the sequence of returns risk is still fully active, even if the required withdrawal is relatively small.
Exactly. By leaving that tiny gap open, the entire $1.4 million is still technically tethered to their life support system.
And that tether creates immense psychological stress.
It really does. Every time the market dips or every time they watch the evening news and see a recession looming, David and Carol are going to feel anxiety.
Because they know their daily survival is linked to the performance of that account.
But if we architect a way to close that final $400 gap, there are 0 forced withdrawals during a market crash. The portfolio is entirely severed from their basic survival.
So how do we actually fix David and Carol's plan? The source material outlines 3 very clear structural solutions to seal this specific gap.
Right, so solution 1 is entirely behavioral. Carol simply delays claiming her Social Security from age 62 to age 67.
And that single decision adds roughly $8,000 a year in guaranteed inflation-adjusted income. That easily covers the $4,800 annual gap.
The problem is solved purely through patience.
Wow, okay. What's the second option?
Solution 2 is structural. They take a small slice of that $1.4 million savings and reposition it into a fixed annuity with an income rider.
To unpack that jargon, they are basically buying themselves a personal pension.
Exactly. They hand a specific chunk of risk over to an insurance company, and in exchange, the insurance company contractually guarantees them a specific paycheck for life.
Regardless of whether the market goes up, down, or sideways.
Right. That paycheck closes the gap, and Carol can still claim her Social Security at 62 if she prefers.
And solution 3 is a hybrid approach. Delay Social Security slightly reposition a smaller amount of assets into a fixed annuity, create an even larger income buffer, and dramatically reduce the pressure on the investment portfolio.
And what is profound about all three of those scenarios is that their total net worth hasn't really changed. It is the exact same amount of wealth, but with a completely different internal architecture.
Once that floor is sealed by binding contracts, that $1.4 million is pure discretionary wealth. They can ride out a savage bear market with total peace of mind because their daily life is unaffected.
It takes retirement planning from being this anxiety-inducing guessing game to a precise engineering project. You either have the floor or you don't. You measure the gap and you close it.
It fundamentally shifts you from hoping for the best to planning for the worst. The question, do I have enough, might actually be the most expensive incomplete question in modern retirement planning.
Because it keeps you hyper-focused on the weight of the backpack, not the safety of the base camp.
The much more complete, much safer question to ask yourself is, have I built a floor that holds no matter what happens in the world?
Yeah, and for anyone listening who is currently looking at their own retirement dashboard, staring at their massive number, and suddenly realizing they might not actually have a secure floor beneath them, the source material offers some incredible resources to help you take concrete action.
Yeah, the very first thing you should do is listen to Tod Long directly. Go find the Income Standard podcast, specifically episode 2, to hear the complete breakdown of this framework in his own voice.
You should also pick up his book, which is literally titled The Income Standard: How to Engineer Retirement Income You Can't Outlive. It is available in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle at theincomestandard.com/book, or you can grab it on Amazon.
And if you want to find out right now, if you have a hole in your floor, there's a remarkably simple free tool on their website. It's the income gap calculator at theincomestandard.com.
Right. You just enter your current guaranteed income sources and your essential monthly expenses, and in about 2 minutes, it shows you exactly what your structural gap is.
And if you are in that critical pre-retirement window, meaning you are between the ages of 55 and 70, you have between $500,000 and $5 million in investable assets, and you are within 10 years of actually retiring, you need to get the Income Standard review.
And we should clarify, this is not a sales pitch. It is a free 45 to 60-minute structural measurement.
They sit down with you, rigidly define your non-negotiable expenses,
right,
work backward to your guaranteed income, and figure out exactly what it takes to build a floor that holds.
But the material is very clear. This is specifically for people who are ready to take action on closing their gap, not just build a personal research library.
If we pull all of these concepts together, it really comes down to how you choose to handle uncertainty. Traditional financial planning tells you to accept uncertainty, to ride out the volatility as long as a computer simulation says the odds are mostly in your favor.
But a probability is not a contract.
Which leaves us with this final lingering thought to explore on your own. We spend all our time worrying about market crashes and inflation. But if your entire survival requires you to actively manage a complex portfolio through periods of extreme economic stress, what happens in your 80s if your cognitive abilities begin to slow down?
Right. The mental agility required to navigate sequence of returns risk is immense.
A permanent contractually guaranteed income floor isn't just financial protection against a bad economy. It is fundamental protection against the day you simply don't have the energy or the cognitive desire to play the market game anymore.